Welcome to episode number 307, where I'm speaking with Dr. Marc Halpern about healing the mental health challenges we have today, and particularly in our post-COVID world. We talk about the causes of disturbances of the mind and how we can heal the mind through Ayurveda and yoga. So please stay tuned. Hi there, I'm your host Colette, and on this podcast I will be sharing the teachings of Ayurveda, yoga, and holistic health practices. Now, if you're new to Ayurveda, I recommend checking out the first couple of episodes where I do an introduction to Ayurveda and the mind-body types. Thanks for listening, and now here's a new episode. Hey there, it's Colette, and before I get into this episode today, I wanted to let you know that it's the last call for the upcoming discounted group Digestive Reset Cleanse. This cleanse is in group format, so we have a private community where we're going to meet with each other, all these like-minded people from around the world, support each other and hold each other accountable throughout the cleanse. However, even though it's a group cleanse, it's still individually tailored to you. And this is really important to me, that I meet with each person in a 90-minute online consultation and really get to understand you and your current health status, and then tailor the cleanse to you and your lifestyle. So tailoring the recipes, the self-care practices, the mindfulness practices, the yoga, etc. And also that it fits in with your lifestyle. So making sure that you're not overwhelmed by the cleanse, that we put a structure in place for you that fits in with your lifestyle and that makes it as easy as possible for you to carry out this cleanse and to really take care of your health and well-being. And so if you're interested in joining this cleanse, it's starting October 6th, so very soon. Please check out the link in the show notes or visit my website, elementshealingandwellbeing.com, and go to the events page. Now, if that date of October 6th does not suit your schedule, you can choose a private cleanse and have me one-on-one for support, and you will find that information under programs. I hope you can come join us on October 6th for this group cleanse to help us transition through the season, eliminate any accumulation of toxins or ama in the body, and any accumulation of doshas, help us to feel light, clear, and energetic, and enter into the new season with vitality and energy. So I hope to see you there. Okay, let's get on to this week's episode. Today, I'm very happy to welcome Dr. Marc Halpern, who is the founder and president of the California College of Ayurveda and the author of 3 Ayurvedic textbooks. A Doctor of Chiropractic and a Doctor of Ayurveda, he holds a postgraduate certification in holistic medicine. Dr. Halpern sits in the advisory boards of multiple prestigious journals and organizations related to Ayurveda, yoga, and research internationally. He has also been a keynote speaker at numerous conferences and universities and had the honor of being invited to speak at Banaras Hindu University and to give a keynote speech at Harvard University's conference on integrative medicine and cancer. Dr. Halpern, welcome to the Elements of Ayurveda podcast. It's an absolute pleasure to have you here with us today.
Well, thank you so much, Colette, for having me here today. I really appreciate you reaching out to me and the opportunity to talk to your audience and to join your community. So thank you for having me.
Great. And I'm really looking forward to delving into this conversation on mental health. And, I just want to start by going through some of the stats. We're seeing a huge mental health crisis today, unfortunately, in the world. And just to give a few stats for the listeners, in a 2023 report from the Mental Health America Association, the key findings were that in 2019 and 2020, 21% of adults are experiencing a mental illness, and that's the equivalent of over 50 million Americans. Over 1 in 10 youth in the US are experiencing depression, and that's severely impairing their ability to function at school, work, home, and with family, or even in their social life. And then over half, 55% of adults with a mental illness do not receive treatment. So a really important topic, Dr. Halpern. I'd love to start with setting a foundation of understanding of the mind from an Ayurvedic perspective.
Sure. Well, let's begin by trying to define what mind is.
Good idea.
Mind is the experience that we're having of energy flowing through our body. And so energy flows through the nadi, or the subtle channels of the body. And we experience that in our brain. We experience the processing of that in our brain as our mind, as our thoughts, as our feelings. So from an Ayurvedic and a yogic perspective, there's really no difference between how energy is flowing through the body, or we could say prana, how prana is flowing through the body, and the experience of the mind. So if a person is having a mental disorder, there is a corresponding disturbance in the flow of prana through the subtle channels of the body. Depending upon the texts that you read, there's anywhere from 72,000 to 350,000 subtle nadi. And so the way in which the prana flows through each one of those channels is determining every thought, every feeling that we experience. And we can say that where there's mental health, there is a disturbance in prana. So therefore, the journey to healing ourselves is one of restoring the natural flow prana. Now, we experience the mind in many different ways. We have our superficial thoughts about the information that we receive from the world. We receive information from the world every single day through our five senses. And we take in that information, and the superficial mind is going to organize it and receive it and be influenced by it. We have to process it. So there's an aspect of our mind called the buddhi, which is going to process it, organize it, and help us to keep the world in order so that we can remember what we see, what we hear, what we feel, and so forth. Now, there are deeper aspects of the mind. There's a deeper aspect of the mind that is processing our connectedness to the whole. There's many ways to describe that. It's our spiritual connectedness. It's the aspect of ourselves that is receiving information not through the five senses, but is receiving information really from someplace beyond our egoic self, someplace beyond this limited body. And we have to process that too. It's our relationship to the cosmic vine. And it's the buddhi that processes that information as well. Most of the time, we are experiencing spiritual indigestion. We're not able to digest the spiritual information that we are able to naturally receive. And one of the reasons we're unable to do that is because there's so much motion, so much movement within the superficial aspects of the mind that it's disturbing the digestion of deeper information from the spiritual world. The end result of mental indigestion is confusion. And that's going to be felt in the mind. It's going to be experienced in the body. It's in the physical body. It's in the subtle body. And ultimately, it is a condition that causes us great suffering. So what I love about Ayurveda and yoga is that they provide a path for being able to heal this entire challenge, for being able to heal the disturbances of the physiology of the body, the disturbances in the physiology of the subtle body, or the 72,000 or 350,000 nadi, how prana is flowing. And Ayurveda and yoga go deeper than that even, and can help us to restore a healthy connection to that which is greater than ourselves. And it's really that is essential for keeping the mind at peace. And I'm sure we can talk about many related topics to that.
Absolutely. Wonderful. Thank you so much for that explanation there. And when you talk about spiritual indigestion, like you said, there's just too much movement going on in the mind, leading to confusion and that lack of awareness. In our world today, there are many reasons, right, for this indigestion that's happening. Can we talk about some
of the causes of these disturbances and this excess movement leading to confusion in the mind?
Sure. Let's begin with the idea that the mind is reactive to everything that we take in from our environment, and that our five senses are like portals or gateways into our body, into our mind, and into our consciousness. And if we take in that which is harmonious for us as individuals, then the body functions normally, the mind is at peace, and we could say mentally healthy. But if we take in that which is disharmonious to us, it doesn't support our physiology, we're going to suffer in the body, we're going to suffer in the mind. Now, we can explore what it means to take in something that is harmonious. From the Ayurvedic perspective, it means that it matches the vikruti of the body. It matches the disturbance that an individual is experiencing in the flow of energy in their body, which is can be defined in terms of the three doshas, vata, pitta, and kapha dosha. But we must answer the question, why do we misuse our senses? Why does that happen? Why do we eat junk food? Why do we take in junk sights when we watch violent video games or watch violent movies? Why do we take in junk smells when we use chemicals to influence the scents and the aromas that we experience? Why do we take in junk sound through our ears? Why are we listening to some of the vitriol that we hear all the time in either the political media or music? Why do we expose ourselves to them? And Ayurveda teaches that we do that because our intellect is failing. And the word for that is pragyaparada. Pragyaparada means the failure of the intellect or crimes against our inner wisdom. It's when we block our innate knowing. We know we are drawn to that which is going to bring about well-being. And yet that part of us that knows that is disturbed, it's blocked, and we wind up interacting with the environment in disharmonious ways. It's not just what we take into our senses. It even happens in terms of how we relate to our neighbors. Harmony or disharmony, how we relate to people on the other side of the political spectrum. Harmony or disharmony. So we misuse our intellect. And when we misuse our intellect, then we're going to misuse our senses. But we have to ask why we do that. Why does our intellect fail us? Why do we make these poor choices in our lives that ultimately result in suffering? And the reason we do that has to do with something more subtle, and that's called parinama. Parinama means transformation, but what it refers to is the transformation that occurs due to motion. Due to motion, and motion is related to time. Time is the measurement of motion. So the more motion we experience, the stress of that motion is what generates biological time and generates the aging process. So with that in mind, if we want to use our intellect properly, we're going to have to slow down. We're living in a very fast world. We're living in a world that is so fast, most of us can't even catch our breath. We have one thing to do after another, which turns into one thing to worry about after another. It seems like there's a threat around every corner, and that's causing us to great disturbance. It's not just the movement of the mind in terms of the fears and the worries and the anxieties, but we're also so active in our physical bodies, running around, doing the things that we feel we need to do to sustain ourselves in this life. All of this exhausts us over time. All that motion makes it very difficult to hear our inner wisdom. Our inner wisdom is something that exists within our heart. It's the whispers of the soul. And when the mind becomes noisy from the chaos, we're unable to hear the whispers of the soul. And without the whispers of the soul, we forget what is harmonious and what is disharmonious. And then we experience the failure of our intellect. And because we forget that, we wind up eating the wrong foods and living an unhealthy lifestyle. And it becomes a whole challenge for our body, for our mind, for our consciousness that ultimately results in great suffering. Whether it's physical diseases that we can put any name on, whether we're talking about cancer or heart disease, diabetes, or Parkinson's disease, all can result as a consequence of this chain of events. And so there's the suffering of the body. There's also the suffering of the mind, the mental health crisis with the anxiety and the anger, the depression we're experiencing and we're seeing every day in society. So if we want to do something about that, we have to work on all the levels. We have to relearn how to use our senses properly. We also are going to need to learn to make healthy choices so that we can retrain our intellect. To make those healthy choices, we're going to have to slow down. We're going to have to slow down the body, move less, and most importantly, slow down the mind, come into the present moment. When we do that, everything changes. Our whole lives change. When we come into the present moment, everything appears clear. Everything appears just natural, and we feel peacefulness of that. In order to slow down, there's one more factor we have to take into consideration. We won't slow down until we can reconcile our relationship with the divine in some way. In Ayurveda, we say that the root cause of all suffering, we say it in yoga too, the root cause of all suffering is avidya, or forgetting our true nature as spirit. When we forget our true nature as spirit, then what are we? When I am just this body, I am just this mind. And if I'm just this body, I'm just this mind, then everything I do is going to be in service of this body and this mind because this is all I am. I'm completely attached to my experience. I want to have a body that's going to, maybe just live for as long as I can, and a mind that is comfortable. But really, what I think I want, is pleasure. I want as much pleasure for this body, and I want as much pleasure for this mind as I can have. So my choices become those that are going to produce the greatest short-term pleasure, which could be anything from sugar to addictive drugs, because they produce tremendous pleasures. Alcohol, cigarettes, for the person who is an addicted cigarette smoker, when they have that cigarette, it brings tremendous pleasure to them. And there's great suffering when they don't get that smoke. So there is a component of our healing, both for the body and the mind, that is essential, and that's restoring our connectedness to the whole. And we call that by many different names. Some people will call it God and say, you have to have a relationship with God. Some people will call it the divine and say the divine can take any form. And so you can restore that connection by connecting to nature. You can restore that connection by connecting to the elements. You can restore that connection by connecting to anything that is outside and greater than your body and your mind. And when you do, and you come from that place, then you're better able to experience the present moment. Then you're able to make healthy choices. And then you're able to use your senses properly. And when you use your senses properly, your physiology is normalized. And that physiology can be talked about in terms of Western physiology of your body, the stress response, the functioning of your organs, or it could be talked about in terms of Ayurvedic physiology, which is the physiology of the three doshas, or yogic physiology, and the way in which prana is moving through the various nadi. But no matter what language you use to talk about it, the process is the same. And when we look at ourselves in that holistic way, then we can develop a plan to help us to achieve what I think everybody really wants. Everybody wants optimum health. Everybody wants peace of mind.
Mm.
And it's available to everybody who is willing to engage the process of their own healing in this holistic way, body, mind, and consciousness.
It's so true. It needs to be a holistic approach. And you mentioned there the mental vikriti, and we talk in Ayurveda about rajas and tamas, and how essentially what you were saying, our world is moving too fast. The energy is moving too much in our body. We don't have any of that quiet stillness in order to contemplate or to allow awareness to enter. And with this comes the overactivation of the nervous system. We're going to our sympathetic nervous system, our fight or flight system a lot, stressing out the systems of the body. And I'd love for you to talk a little bit. I want to come back to restoring and healing and restoring prana, but I want to talk a little bit about the mental vikriti of rajas and tamas. And, you know, we're seeing that a lot in our world today, and how the pendulum is swinging wildly between the two. I have talked on the podcast about these mental vikriti, but if you could touch on those as well, that would be wonderful. And our ultimate goal, of course, of restoring sattva along with prana.
You know, in the Charaka Samhita, which is the main body of knowledge of Ayurveda, of course, there are other Ayurvedic texts as well. But in the Charaka Samhita, there's a beautiful phrase that says that disease is caused by vata, pitta, kapha, rajas, and tamas. And that these are the causes of disease, the disturbance of the three doshas, as well as the two gunas, rajas and tamas. Only sattva does not cause disease. So we have to understand that. Now, what is meant by sattva, rajas, and tamas, these mahagunas, these great qualities? These are describing the great qualities of nature. And tamas is the quality of darkness or inertia. Rajas is turbulence and distraction. And you could say that sattva is clarity. I often talk about a lake, and imagine yourself sitting by the side of a lake in the middle of the evening on a quiet night. It's perfectly clear skies and there's no wind. And you're sitting next to that lake and you're looking at the surface of the lake in the moonlight and in the sunlight. I mean, in the moonlight and starlight. And what you see is a perfect reflection of the moon and the stars. And this is beautifully symbolic of when the mind is perfectly still, the light of the universe is reflected through you. That is sattva. When you have a sattvic mind, calm and clear, light of the universe, meaning the awareness of the higher self, is beautifully reflected through you. And with that, we experience our greatest potential physically, our greatest potential emotionally, and our greatest level of awareness spiritually. We feel the interconnectedness of all of creation. And this is sattva. Now, imagine still that you're sitting next to that lake and you throw a rock in the middle of the lake. And now you have all these ripples coming out from the center of the lake. And those ripples cause the starlight and the moonlight to become splintered. And now all we can get a sense of is that there's something up there, but we don't quite know what it is. And so that's the feeling of rajas. We might feel like there's more to life, but we're not quite sure what it is. And we lose the confidence in what's above and beyond the ordinary experience of our lives. When we throw that rock in the middle of the lake, all those ripples are the thoughts and the feelings that are moving through us, all the turbulence that is moving through us. This is rajas, and this is what provokes our emotions, whether those emotions are fear, worry, nervousness, and anxiety, which is common for those with a vata nature, or anger, resentment, jealousy, and ultra competitiveness. And this is for the pitta nature, the tendency that's there And for kapha, it tends to be more of a melancholy. It tends to be more of a sedated, mild depression that is present in those individuals, along with deep attachments and deep feelings that go along with those attachments. So this is the rajasic experience of living in the world. And most of us who are coming to Ayurveda are actually in that state where the rock is in the water, thrown in the water, the ripples are there. Most of the practitioners as well as the patients get caught up in the drama of the world. And caught up in the drama of the world, we get very emotional, and we're trying to find our way back to sattva, back to the clarity, back to the stillness through which the light of God or the light of the divine is beautifully reflected, and we become a vehicle of that divine light, of that divine awareness. In that moment, we experience the present moment and the peacefulness and connectedness that comes with that. Now imagine that you're sitting next to that lake, and now what you do is you stir up all the mud in the lake, and the clouds fill the sky. Well, now when you look at that lake, you don't see anything. You get no sense that there are stars or a moon up in the sky. This is tamas. Tamas is the darkness or the inertia. And in our mind and consciousness, when this is experienced, the person completely forgets, doesn't even have any idea that there's anything outside of themselves, and is not at all mindful of the interconnectedness of all of creation. So one becomes completely self-absorbed in their own experience. And with that, they're going to experience their own darker nature, in that they're willing to cause harm to others to have what they feel they need for themselves. Some will even cause harm to themselves in the process of trying to bring themselves great pleasures, which occurs, for instance, in addictions. And so this tamasic state is a really dark state. Now, what's interesting about it is because people are completely unaware in this state, especially in the darkest of nights, they actually think that they're doing well. And the saying we have in the West, of course, is ignorance is bliss. Mm-hmm. So they'll go around saying everything is fine, everything is perfect. But in the process, they are destroying themselves or destroying others. Now, as they begin to awaken, the first rays of light enter into their awareness. Those rays of light are very painful. Think of going outside when you've been in the dark for a long time and it hurts your eyes. Mm-hmm. Well, this really provokes the darkest emotions. Is when the first rays of light come in, right in that place between rajas and tamas, because now turbulence provokes a very dark activity. Now, from there, we move into getting used to the turbulence of the world, and we have our more common rajasic nature, where a person is just caught up in the emotions and not happy about it, and gets a sense that there's more, but they don't know how to experience that. And eventually, as we continue our evolution, we move towards sattva, which is really a state of transcendence. Transcendence means not that the world is perfect, or even that your world is perfect. People sometimes think that sattva means that there'll be no challenges that you will face in this world. What it really means is that you will not be reactive to the challenges that you face in this world, not because you repress them and deny them, but because you witness them and transcend them. Mm. And when you transcend them, you maintain your equanimity, you maintain your sense of peacefulness and awareness, even when confronted by the challenges of the world. And the experience of that is love. The experience of that is kindness. The experience of that is compassion. These are all the facets of our greatest potential. Mm. Now, this kind of purity is beautiful, and it's what we seek as yogis and human beings on the healing journey. And even then there is a state even beyond that, called nitya sattvasta. And this state beyond sattva is where the yogi's ultimate goal is. And the yogi's ultimate goal is to even transcend the desire and attachment for that peacefulness, for that clarity, for that the highest virtues. The yogi eventually even lets go of that, and that's the final stage of that. Ultimately leads to unmani-avasta, or the stage of being mindless. When there's no mind, the mind is at its highest state of peacefulness and the greatest bliss. And it is the bliss of oneness, the interconnectedness with the universe. And that's what we seek in our healing, ultimately. So the healing journey is one of the body. Nobody wants to have Parkinson's disease or heart disease or cancer. It's one of the mind. Nobody wants to anything other than the experience of peacefulness, of love. And it's also one of consciousness, which is one of reconnecting back to the whole. And that's the journey of Ayurveda and yoga. And what's really, really fascinating is that society today as a whole is facing, it was forced into an experience as a group. The entire planet was forced into isolation on the greatest level that we've experienced in our lifetimes through the COVID-19 pandemic. We were all, locked down. And when we were locked down, we went into an incredible place of separation. We were forced to separate from our neighbors, from our families. We were forced to separate from our colleagues in the workplace. And this was really provocative to our consciousness and to our mind. And so when we experience separation and the feeling of separation, we always increase our suffering. When we experience interconnectedness, we always decrease our suffering. When we're isolated, we are going to suffer more. When we feel part of the whole, whether it's a community or a family, or one with the universe, we feel better. So we were all forced into a deep state of separation as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. And what that did is it actually created stillness. We would think that's a good thing because everything slowed down. And we would think, oh, that's what the yogi would want. And in many ways, you're right. The yogi would embrace that opportunity to turn their home into their cave and to meditate in their cave for 2 years. Most people are not yogis. And so the way in which they respond to stillness, the ways in which we respond to stillness when we are uncomfortable with stillness is that our fears, our anxieties, and our inner demons rise up in the stillness. And this is natural. This is told in the texts what will happen to Rajasic and Tamasic individuals. In the stillness, the darker demons arise within the mind. And then we experience it and we deal with it in disharmonious ways. And as we know, so many people during the pandemic moved toward deeper addictions. If you had tendencies toward an abusive nature and you were locked down with somebody, you could become quite abusive. And really what we can say is that the stillness, when it provokes the demons, reduces our capacity to love. The yogi, on the other hand, and the Vaidya, the Ayurvedic practitioner who is living harmonious, embraces the stillness. And in that stillness, the light shines even brighter. And now there's deeper connectedness going deeper into one's spiritual practices. So it's really fascinating to look at the different ways in which individuals responded to the pandemic and to see it as a reflection of what was going on in their heart and in their mind in terms of these three gunas.
Yeah, absolutely. Fascinating. Thank you for that explanation. It was really powerful and so clear. I'm going to jump in here to tell you some very exciting news. I'm finally hosting a Ayurveda rejuvenation retreat in Bali with Dr. Sujata from Amrita Siddhi Ayurvedic Clinic. That's where I worked from 2014 to 2015. And finally, after all these years of talking about it, we're going to do a retreat together. The dates are December 4th to 10th, 2023. It's an all-inclusive retreat. You'll get consultations, Ayurvedic medicines, treatments, Ayurvedic food, and you'll be in this beautiful healing cocoon of Amrita Siddhi Ayurvedic Clinic. You can check out the video and all the details on my website, elementshealingandwellbeing.com. Just click on the link in the show notes or visit my website and click on the events tab. And I hope to see you in Bali in December. And it is so interesting that during the pandemic, and I'm so happy that you brought this up, because absolutely people reacted differently, rajasic, tamasic, some sattvically, to this forced isolation. However, I do think that people got to reflect at least a little bit on life and so on. And now that the world has gone back to quote unquote normal, I feel that this is causing like almost an existential crisis for people, because maybe they had some revelations during that COVID period, but now the world has sped up again and we've gone back into our normal patterns. And yet they wanted to make those shifts and changes because they got a glimpse of how it is to slow down and go into that stillness that we had during COVID.
Yeah, I think that the experience is so different for different groups of people. And I think those groups of people can be defined in many ways by their consciousness or their dominant guna of their mind. For those individuals, for that group of individuals who were ready to begin to experience stillness in a positive way, for them, moving back out into the world now of motion becomes quite difficult. There is a yearning that returns for wanting to continue the stillness. And that's one of the challenges that's going to arise. And with that comes certain frustrations and certain emotional provocations. And that's where indeed the great opportunity for those individuals lies for even deeper healing, because the healing journey eventually leads the aware person, and I think we're talking now about more aware people, eventually leads people who are more aware to cultivate deeper non-attachment. And non-attachment is essential to maintaining our equanimity. So by non-attachment, what I mean is greater acceptance. It means being able to adapt, as Swami Shivananda so beautifully says, to adapt, adjust, and accommodate whatever life gives us, whether we are isolated or whether we're tossed back out into a busy world. The movement of the mind is far more important than the external movement, although for most people, they're completely interrelated. But for the yogi can operate in the world, can perform their dharma, can work hard, can do the work that is necessary and maintain their equanimity at the same time. But that comes as a part of their development. And you have to go through the stages of development. It's a beautiful story of the Samudra Manthan. The Samudra Manthan is the churning of the oceans. And in the churning of the oceans, and the oceans represent our consciousness, and the gods and the demons are fighting with each other. And they use this great mountain to churn the ocean. I'll have to tell the short story. They use this great mountain to churn the ocean. And out of the ocean, the first thing that arises is a terrible poison called the halhala. And this poison is then swallowed by Lord Shiva. As the churning continues, various gods and goddesses and articles arise from the ocean. And then the final culmination of the churning is the divine healer. And the divine healer, Lord Dhanvantari, arises from the ocean. Now, metaphorically, what this story is referring to is that the gods and the demons are battling inside of our minds. And so the gods represent our higher self and our capacity to love and to be compassionate and be kind. And the demons represent our fears and our anger and our worries and so forth. And they're fighting for control over the body, over the mind, and over consciousness. We say the three worlds. They're fighting for control over the three worlds. But as they do this battle, the first thing that rises, that comes out of it, is the poison. And that's what most people are experiencing. Most people are experiencing the challenges that come up from the stillness. Now, in this story, the relationship to stillness is that a tortoise by the name of Kurma the tortoise had to swim down to the bottom of the ocean and allow this mountain to rest on its back. And in order to allow the churning to actually be successful, the tortoise had to draw in its arms, its legs, and its head, which represent the five senses. Mm. By drawing in the five senses, then an individual is able to become still. And that's what we were forced to do in the pandemic. We could no longer go out and enjoy our sensory experience of the world. So the tortoise pulled in its five appendages. Now the mountain could rest on its back and the churning could take place. The churning is the churning of the mind and consciousness. Well, the first thing that happened to so many individuals is the halhala arose. And that poison arises in all the disturbed mental illnesses that we experienced then and that many are still experiencing. The story tells us that the opportune thing to do is to turn it over to power that is greater than yourself, any aspect of God that you relate to, whether it's Jesus or you have an angel or you have a spirit guide or you connect to Lord Shiva. You turn it over to the divine, and eventually the divine swallows that poison for you. And you keep doing the work. And you keep doing the churning, which is now going back out into the world. And eventually from that process, the divine healer arises from within. When the divine healer arises from within, now we're able to begin to restore our equanimity, our balance, and our healing happens on the deepest level, So I guess I told that story because I want your listeners to understand the churning is natural. And that's what everybody's experiencing right now. We were forced into the churning. Mm. And we're experiencing the result of that. We were forced into the stillness.
Yeah.
Poison has arisen. What do we do with it? Mm-hmm. And this is where we have an opportunity to deepen our spiritual lives in order to reconcile the challenge, the trauma that we've really co-experienced as a community.
Absolutely. Great story. It really helps with that understanding. And I agree, the importance of having a belief in something, whatever that is, be it the divine, nature, whatever it is for you. I think it's so important, and particularly through those tough times when there's a lot of churning going on and they can be feel overwhelmed. Like you're saying, to have that belief and hand over that poison to whatever it is you believe in, while continuing to do the work, working on aligning yourself with nature, working on your dinacharya and so on. But having faith in something is important.
It is. Faith is the antidote to fear. Mm-hmm. Faith and fear cannot coexist together. Mm-hmm. You're either in faith or you're in fear. And fear brings up the emotions of anxiety and worry and sleeplessness and all the things that come with that. So it's either the strength of your faith, and it can be faith in anything, but strength of your faith that keeps you solid. Yeah. And when you lose your faith, everything becomes unstable. And so one of the healing remedies that I wind up, working with a lot of my patients with is supporting them to go deeper into their spiritual journey. If they're Christian, spend more time at church and reading the Bible. And if they're more yogic or Hindu, spend more time with Krishna and the Bhagavad Gita, and spend time in community with your sangha, with your spiritual community. But whatever it is that you do more of it during these difficult times. For some people who don't have that sort of spiritual connection, sometimes it's reading books, that are more popular, that are parables that can inspire you. I've been inspired over the years by Richard Bach's book, Illusions. I think it's a beautiful book. Dan Millman's book, The Way of a Peaceful Warrior. Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse. These are beautiful parable books that are entertaining spirituality. And this can help you in subtle ways to come to that place of reconnectedness. Now, all that spiritual work is important, and so too is making healthy choices. Yeah. So while we're doing the spiritual work, it's also important to live a healthy lifestyle. And if you only focus on the spiritual work, but you don't implement a healthy lifestyle, you won't get very far. Likewise, if you only focus on the lifestyle and you don't do the spiritual work, you'll eventually stop making progress on your lifestyle. The two go hand in hand. They're interrelated. Body, mind, and consciousness are one. They are interwrapped around each other, within each other. So we have to do the physical work, the emotional work, and the spiritual work all at the same time. And so lifestyle, what you mentioned, dinacharya, everything you do from the moment you wake up until the moment you go to bed is supportive of your spiritual life. And your spiritual life gives you the empowerment to actually make the changes in your physical life you may need to make. The greatest example, and we see this, is with addicts who turn their life over to God through whatever program they're involved in, many 12-step programs. But when they turn their life over to God, they become empowered to no longer use the substance that had control over them. Well, the same thing is true about eating sugar. Well, the same thing is true about going to bed at a reasonable hour and waking up early to meditate. All of these behaviors, we are empowered through our spiritual connection to be able to follow through with. So it's very important to integrate the physical lifestyle aspects of Ayurveda with the emotional and spiritual work that Ayurveda supports through the cultivation of sattva.
Mm-hmm. Such great advice. And I think sometimes on our journey with Ayurveda and yoga, we can get caught up in the self-care practices, the dinacharya and so on, and forget about that relationship with the divine and forgetting about our true nature of spirit. And as you said at the start, healing and restoring our prana and promoting sattva is really about reconnecting with that relationship. And I think it's a great place if people are starting out or even on their journey, is having that foundation of belief in something that you can hand things over to when it gets overwhelming. The world can be overwhelming today. And as you said, continuing to work on those daily dinacharya, those habits day in, day out, aligning yourself with the circadian rhythms. But I think sometimes that conversation about our relationship with the divine and our true nature of spirit is set to the side. So I'm so glad that we got to discuss this today and bring up the importance of that. And as we finish up here, Dr. Halpern, if there's anything else that you want to add here, please continue.
Yeah, sure. I think I just want to, given that we've all come out of this pandemic together and that we're experiencing post-COVID challenges, I think there's a few things that we could keep in mind that will keep us a little bit more balanced. And one of them I've already touched on, and to recognize that the challenges we're experiencing are a normal part of the process of our healing, and to not reject it, but to rather accept it and to say, yes, this is part of the process of our healing. Now, as we come out of the isolation, if you are already a more spiritually minded person, you're probably not struggling as much because you embrace the stillness. I would encourage you to continue cultivating that stillness through meditation. You can spend your time in meditation, sometime in meditation, and bring that stillness into the world of service. We are living in a time where service is a part of our spiritual journey. We don't get to just stay home. We have to go out in the world and we have to work, not just for the sake of working, but for the sake of serving. Service is love in action. And so go out and serve more. Find the way to serve moves you to the highest degree. What is it that moves through you? Be a vessel of that divine love and let it take the place. It can be expressed in any way. You could become a practitioner of Ayurvedic medicine and let your service to Ayurveda be love, be the way you express love, but it doesn't have to be Ayurveda. You could be a shoe shiner, and every shoe you shine, you want to be beautiful because it's an expression of love. And that person leaves, wearing shoes that are just sparkling, and it lifts up their heart and their mind. And the same would be true of a hairstylist, and the same would be true of a grocery clerk. Whatever it is that you do it and do it really, really well. Not from a place of, oh, I have to do it perfectly, but rather I want to be a vehicle of love, and my service is the way in which my love is expressed. And if you keep that in your heart and mind, I think that going back out into the world of service is actually something that we can embrace. Another thing that I want to mention is that it's really important to connect again with people. And we've forgotten how to do that. And this incredible division that we experience in the world today is part of that. Division is separation, is isolation. And what we want to do is we want to find more unity. We want to reduce the separation and find more community. And so go out there and join groups, meet people in person, get away from that gaming control and away from your screens, and actually meet people, talk to people, and be with people. It is a lost skill. We're seeing it especially in those who are teenagers and young adults today that never had an opportunity prior to COVID to actually learn those skill sets. And they have the highest level of mental health challenges, the absolute highest level. And we're going to continue to see the ramifications of that. So if you're a parent, encourage them to join groups, meet people, form personal relationships, not virtual relationships. This is going to be an important part of healing mental health challenges. And of course, follow us, learn more about Ayurveda, follow a sattvic diet, a diet that's appropriate for your constitution, live harmoniously through your day, getting up at the right time, going to bed at the right time, and do all of that and connect with spirit at the same time. This is the path of healing. And if we walk that path, we can all heal. We have that potential inside of us. And so I really want to leave your listeners with the hope and the knowledge that they are truly capable of being well, of being kind, and of being loved.
Beautifully stated, and so great that you got those wonderful points in. being of service, living a sattvic life, and reconnecting in real life. So important, because I think that's a big problem post-COVID. And I definitely see in my friends' teenagers is they have problems with connecting in real life. A lot of their relationships are virtual. So wonderful advice there. And can you tell us more about the California College of Ayurveda and your offerings, please?
Yeah, at California College of Ayurveda, and we've been educating students of Ayurvedic medicine for the past 30 years. And we have training programs to become an Ayurvedic health counselor, a clinical Ayurvedic specialist, and all the way up to the highest level of education offered in the United States, which is to become a medical Ayurvedic specialist. And these are the main Ayurvedic programs. We also offer a lot of workshops and seminars, and those workshops and seminars are on Ayurvedic yoga therapy, yoga nidra teacher training programs, Ayurvedic massage and body therapy trainings, marma therapy. There's so many different offerings, and you can go to ayurvedacollege.com and you can take a look at the website there and take a look at all of the programs and learn more about what we do. Ayurvedic health counselors work in preventative medicine. Clinical Ayurvedic specialists work in clinical medicine, doing disease management. The medical Ayurvedic specialists with the highest level of training, they're the ones that are most capable of integrating into the medical community and bringing Ayurveda into the medical community. They have the deepest level of knowledge. They understand research. They understand laboratory tests, but they interpret it all from the lens of Ayurveda. So these are the main offerings here at the California College of Ayurveda. And again, you can go to our website, ayurvedacollege.com, to learn more. You can also take a look at the books that I've written. Healing Your Life, Lessons on the Path of Ayurveda is more of my personal story. It's written really for you because we're all healing our lives. The first part of the story is me healing my life from having been crippled. And the second part of the book is all about healing your life through the knowledge of Ayurvedic medicine. I've also written 5 textbooks. And one of them is called Principles of Ayurvedic Medicine. It's available to the general public. So you're able to receive that textbook. And another textbook that was recently published is called Classical Yoga Therapy. The higher level of textbooks are available to our clinical students and our medical students that are here at the college. So if you'd like more information, contact us and take a look at what we offer. And if we can be of service to you, that would be an incredible honor and a privilege.
Wonderful. And I will put that link in the show notes. So please go there to get over to the website. And Dr. Halpern, thank you so much. This was a great conversation, much needed in this time of post-COVID and our mental health crisis, but great tips here today, great knowledge and information. So I appreciate you taking the time to talk with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Colette.
I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Dr. Halpern. Please check out the show notes for all the links mentioned in this episode. Don't forget, I have that upcoming discounted group cleanse starting October 6th. So if you want to join us, book your consultation soon. And also we have the upcoming retreat in Bali, December 4th to the 10th for the 7-day rejuvenation retreat. All those links are in the show notes, or visit my website, elementshealingandwellbeing.com. If you think that this episode will be helpful for family or friends, please share it with them so we can spread this great wisdom of Ayurveda. And if you haven't already subscribed or follow the podcast, please do so. And the new episodes will automatically download for you on a weekly basis. If you would like to leave a rating and review for the show, I would really appreciate it wherever you listen to your podcasts. And you can find me on Facebook under Elements Healing and Wellbeing, and on Instagram under my new page, Elements of Ayurveda Podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in, and until next time, take good care of yourself, be well, and bye for now. Slán go fóill.